over $250 million. That's how much Donald Trump and his company could be on the hook for after a judge took a bold step that might change everything. Imagine waking up and realizing your skyscrapers, luxury estates, and brand empire could be ripped out from under you, not by your rivals, but by a courtroom ruling. This isn't a headline from a political thriller. It's happening right now. A New York judge has just rejected Trump's claims, tearing through his legal defenses and clearing the way for a possible seizure of his assets. Yes, his prized properties and financial strongholds are now under serious threat, and the reasons behind it are more shocking than you'd think. The courtroom drama is packed with allegations of fraud, deception, and manipulation, shaking the very foundation of Trump's business legacy. So why is the law finally catching up? What secrets came to light? And how did Trump's empire end up in this legal storm? Stay tuned. We're breaking down 10 powerful reasons behind this historic legal move. One of the most explosive revelations in the courtroom came from something that sounds simple, but carries massive consequences: how Donald Trump valued his properties. According to the judge's findings, Trump repeatedly and knowingly inflated the worth of his real estate assets to an extreme degree. We're not talking about small adjustments. In some cases, the valuations were allegedly hundreds of millions of dollars above market value. Take Mar-a-Lago, for example. Trump reportedly claimed it was worth as much as $739 million, when experts suggest it was actually worth closer to $18 to $27 million based on its deed restrictions. That's not a minor discrepancy. It's a huge red flag. And it wasn't just one property. Trump Tower, 40 Wall Street, and several golf courses also showed similar inflation patterns in his financial statements. The purpose: to secure better loans, insurance deals, and financial standing, all based on figures that judges say simply weren't real. In the courtroom, this wasn't treated as a businessman's optimism. It was labeled fraud. And in civil court, fraud doesn't just bring embarrassment, it brings massive penalties, including the potential seizure of assets obtained or maintained under false pretenses. The judge made it clear: when the foundation of your wealth is built on deception, the law can and will tear it down. This revelation didn't just damage Trump's credibility, it pierced the armor of his business empire. If the court rules that Trump knowingly lied about asset values for personal gain, it opens the door to stripping him of control over those very properties. This isn't just a slap on the wrist. It's a legal takedown of the very strategy Trump has boasted about for decades. And it's only the first reason why the judge is coming down hard. If this breakdown made you rethink everything you knew about power and the law, drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters more than headlines. We put serious time and research into exposing the truth like this, so support the channel by subscribing. It's just one click, but it keeps this work alive. At the heart of the case against Donald Trump lies a pattern of behavior that many financial experts are calling one of the most blatant examples of loan fraud in modern business history. While inflating property values was the first step, the second, and arguably more dangerous, move was what Trump did with those inflated numbers. He used them to secure massive loans from banks under false financial pretenses. When applying for loans, Trump submitted personal financial statements that vastly overstated his net worth and the value of his assets. These documents were presented as accurate reflections of his financial standing, but investigators in the court found them to be riddled with exaggerations and outright falsehoods. This allowed Trump to negotiate better interest rates, larger loan amounts, and favorable repayment terms, advantages he may never have received if lenders had known the true figures. For example, one bank reportedly granted Trump a $100 million loan based largely on documents that claimed he had billions more in assets than he actually did. That's not a small oversight. It's a major misrepresentation that directly affects the bank's risk assessment. In legal terms, that's called fraudulent inducement, and it's a serious offense. What's even more damaging is that the court found this wasn't a one-time mistake, but part of a long-standing strategy. The judge ruling suggested a deliberate effort to paint a rosier picture of Trump as financial empire to keep the money flowing. And when a court determines that loans were obtained through deception, it opens the door to rescinding those agreements, freezing assets, and even forcing repayments under harsher, when you're under legal scrutiny, especially involving finances, receipts matter. And in Donald Trump's case, the court found a glaring issue, a lack of credible documentation to back up his asset, valuations, and financial claims. In simple terms, when the judge and prosecutors asked for proof, much of what was provided was either incomplete, inconsistent, or flat out missing. Financial statements submitted by Trump and the Trump Organization often lacked supporting evidence. Things like independent appraisals, verified income statements, or reliable third-party evaluations. Instead, many numbers were based on what the court called Trump's own estimates. That's a serious problem in the legal world. You kind of say, I believe this is worth X amount, without the data to back it up, especially when those figures are used to secure loans or avoid taxes. This wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping. The court saw it as part of a deliberate pattern, a way to avoid accountability by not leaving behind a clear paper trail. And in legal cases, especially those involving fraud or financial misconduct, the absence of documentation can be just as damaging as false documentation. Why? Because it creates reasonable suspicion that there was something to hide. Think about this like applying for a loan. The bank asks for your income proof, tax returns, and maybe an appraisal on your home. Now imagine handing them a single-page printout you made yourself with no backup. That's essentially what the judge said happened here. It doesn't fly in court, and it certainly doesn't fly when you're under investigation by the New York Attorney General. Without solid documentation, Trump's defense started to fall apart quickly. And for a man known for deals in dollars, that lack of paperwork may end up being one of his costliest mistakes yet. One of the most compelling reasons the judge moved toward asset seizure is Donald Trump's continued defiance of court orders. In any legal battle, especially one of this magnitude, the court expects all parties, regardless of status, to cooperate fully, follow instructions, and respect the process. But in this case, Trump's behavior in and out of court has raised serious concerns about his willingness to comply with the law. Throughout the investigation, Trump was repeatedly warned by the judge to stop making misleading public statements and to cease submitting inaccurate financial documents. Despite these warnings, he and his legal team allegedly continued to provide false or incomplete information. In some cases, documents were missing key details, valuations were still being manipulated, or deadlines were ignored altogether. These aren't just minor procedural missteps. In civil court, non-compliance with court orders is viewed as a sign of bad faith, and it gives the judge strong legal grounds to escalate penalties. That's exactly what happened here. The judge cited Trump's ongoing violations as a key reason for taking a more aggressive approach, including potentially seizing assets to ensure the enforcement of any financial penalties. Judges must believe that defendants are acting in good faith and are willing to correct past mistakes. But when someone, especially a high-profile figure like Trump, repeatedly shows they have no intention of following legal instructions, the court has no choice but to respond with stronger measures. It's not about politics. It's about upholding the authority of the court. This pattern of defiance didn't just damage Trump's case. It practically forced the court's hand. By ignoring the rules, Trump transformed what could have been a manageable financial dispute into a legal crisis. And now the consequences are no longer theoretical. They're financial, real, and rapidly unfolding. If this breakdown made you rethink everything you knew about power and the law, drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters more than headlines. We put serious time and research into exposing the truth like this, so support the channel by subscribing. It's just one click, but it keeps this work alive. Another major reason behind the judge's decision to reject Trump's claims and open the door to asset seizure is the alleged misuse of the Trump Organization, the very heart of Trump's financial empire. What was supposed to be a legitimate business operation structured with corporate integrity and financial transparency was revealed in court to have operated more like a personal piggy bank for Donald Trump. According to the findings, Trump allegedly blurred the lines between business and personal finances. using company resources for personal benefit while still reporting inflated asset values to banks and insurers. Prosecutors argued that the Trump Organization was used to funnel funds, manipulate valuations, and shield Trump from direct accountability. In simple terms, the company wasn't functioning like a traditional business. It was allegedly designed to serve Trump's personal financial goals, regardless of legality. What made this even more problematic was how the Trump Organization reportedly created or approved misleading financial statements, which were then used to secure loans, gain tax advantages, and enhance Trump's public image. These actions didn't just reflect bad bookkeeping. They suggested a coordinated effort to defraud financial institutions and regulators using the company as a legal shield. The court saw through this structure and determined that Trump couldn't hide behind his company anymore. When a business becomes a vehicle for fraud, courts have the power to break that corporate shield and hold the individual personally liable. That's exactly what's happening here. By misusing the Trump Organization to carry out and cover up questionable financial practices, Trump gave the court solid legal ground to consider more aggressive penalties, including the seizure of assets held through or by the company. In the judge's eyes, the organization wasn't a defense, it was part of the crime. One of the key reasons the judge decided to reject Trump's claims and move toward asset seizure was his long-standing history of dodging legal consequences. Over the years, Donald Trump has built a reputation for using the courts to his advantage, delaying cases, filing endless appeals, and creating legal smokescreens to wear down his opponents. But this time, the strategy may have backfired. In the courtroom, patterns matter. The judge didn't just look at the case in isolation. He reviewed Trump's track record of legal maneuvering, both in this case and in others. What emerged was a picture of someone who consistently evaded accountability, often using technicalities or loopholes rather than confronting accusations head on. From unpaid contractors to previous lawsuits involving Trump University and the Trump Foundation, the judge saw a clear pattern of behavior. When faced with legal trouble, Trump pushes back hard, not with facts, but with delay tactics. This history made the court less inclined to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. In civil fraud cases, judges are tasked not only with ruling on facts, but also with protecting the integrity of the legal process. When a defendant is seen as abusing that process, harsher consequences often follow. The judge viewed Trump's behavior as part of a calculated strategy to avoid scrutiny and delay justice, and determined it was time to take decisive action. By leaning on his old playbook, Trump may have underestimated how seriously this court would respond. The result? The judge sent a message loud and clear. Past evasions won't protect you anymore. And now, those years of slipping through legal cracks are catching up with him in the form of potential asset seizures and crippling financial penalties. In nearly every legal case involving Donald Trump, there's a familiar pattern: deflect, distance, deny. And in this case, that strategy was on full display when Trump and his legal team argued that he wasn't personally responsible for the allegedly fraudulent financial statements. They claimed that the numbers were prepared by his accountants, legal advisors, and executives, and that Trump simply relied on their expertise without knowing all the details. But the judge didn't buy it. Why? Because court documents revealed that Trump personally signed off on many of those very same financial statements. In some instances, his signature appeared right below disclaimers affirming the accuracy of the valuations. In other words, he wasn't just a passive recipient of bad advice, he was actively involved in the decisions being challenged. In court, the judge made it clear, you can't claim to be the mastermind of a billion-dollar empire one moment and then say you didn't know what was happening the next. It's a contradiction. It weakens the defense and undermines Trump's entire narrative. More importantly, it signals to the court that Trump is unwilling to take responsibility for the very actions that led to the lawsuit. This rejection of accountability played a major role in the court's decision to move toward more severe consequences. If Trump had acknowledged errors or shown a willingness to cooperate, the outcome might have been different. But by refusing to take ownership, he left the judge with little reason to show leniency. In civil fraud cases, intent matters. And the court concluded that Trump's actions, his refusal to accept responsibility, pointed to a deliberate effort to deceive, not an accidental oversight. That ruling pushed this case from a financial dispute into the territory of serious legal punishment, including the looming threat of asset seizure. In high-stakes legal battles, witness credibility can make or break a case. For Donald Trump, the courtroom turned into a battleground where his closest allies and executives were called to defend him, but their testimonies may have done more harm than good. The judge noted that many of the witnesses supporting Trump appeared evasive, inconsistent, or outright unreliable under questioning. Some of Trump's longtime associates, including executives from the Trump Organization, were brought in to explain the financial statements and property valuations at the heart of the case. But instead of providing clear, consistent answers, many witnesses contradicted previous statements, dodged direct questions, or claimed they couldn't recall key details. In one instance, and a top Trump accountant admitted that he never verified the property values Trump submitted and simply trusted the numbers he was given. This lack of solid, trustworthy testimony created a serious credibility gap. In civil court, judges rely heavily on the clarity and consistency of evidence and testimony, and when a defendant's own witnesses appear confused or evasive, it undermines the entire defense. In Trump's case, the judge remarked that the testimonies did not support the claim that any honest mistakes were made. Instead, they painted a picture of a coordinated effort to mislead. Even worse, the inconsistency among Trump's witnesses made it easier for prosecutors to present their narrative that the Trump Organization operated in a way that blurred the lines between truth and fiction, especially when money and public image were involved. The judge ultimately concluded that these testimonies lacked the transparency and integrity expected in court. When your own team can convincingly defend your actions, the legal system takes notice. And in this case, that failure added another layer of justification for the court to move forward with harsh financial consequences, including asset seizure. From the very beginning of this legal saga, Donald Trump has framed the case as a political witch hunt, a narrative he's used repeatedly to rally his supporters and discredit the legal system. Through press conferences, social media posts, and public speeches, Trump portrayed himself as a victim of biased judges and corrupt prosecutors rather than someone facing serious allegations of financial misconduct. But inside the courtroom, political rhetoric holds no weight, and that proved to be a critical misstep. While Trump was busy building a public defense filled with slogans, outrage, and deflection, the judge focused on hard evidence, documents, sworn testimonies, financial records, and years of transactions. In court, you can't argue with numbers, signatures, and paper trails. And despite Trump's efforts to turn the case into a political drama, the judge remained focused on the legal facts, and those facts didn't work in Trump's favor. One of the most damaging outcomes of relying on political arguments instead of legal ones is that it showed the court a lack of serious engagement with the charges. Judges expect well-reasoned, evidence-based defenses, not emotionally charged statements crafted for media headlines. This approach made it appear that Trump wasn't treating the case with the gravity it demanded, which may have further undermined his credibility in the eyes of the court. By continuing to blur the line between public perception and legal responsibility, Trump lost ground where it mattered most in front of a judge. His team's failure to counter the accusations with solid legal arguments helped solidify the court's decision to pursue harsher penalties. Ultimately, the courtroom is not a campaign stage, and while Trump may continue to wage a battle in the court of public opinion, the legal system runs on facts, not sound bites. That disconnect only accelerated the path toward potential assets, seizure, and deepened the legal hole he now finds himself in. Perhaps the most powerful reason behind the judge's decision to reject Trump's claims and move toward asset seizure comes down to something far bigger than Trump himself: judicial integrity and the protection of legal precedent. In simple terms, the court had to make a decision that would not only hold one man accountable, but also uphold the credibility of the entire justice system. If the court had allowed Trump to walk away unpunished after presenting fraudulent financial documents, repeatedly defying court orders and refusing to take responsibility, it would have sent a dangerous message that wealth, fame, or political influence can buy immunity from the law. Judges understand the ripple effect such a ruling could have, not just on this case, but on future cases involving corporate fraud and high-profile defendants. That's why the court made it clear justice must be consistent no matter who stands trial. By enforcing harsh penalties, including the potential seizure of Trump's assets. The judge is reinforcing a fundamental legal principle: no one is above the law. This is critical not just for public confidence, but for setting a standard that future courts and prosecutors can point to when handling similar cases. Legal experts have already cited this case as a landmark moment in the fight against white-collar crime and political corruption. Additionally, the judge's decision strengthens the idea that courts are not influenced by public pressure, political threats, or media spin. They are governed by facts, evidence, and the rule of law. And when those principles are threatened, especially by powerful individuals, the legal system must respond with clarity and force. In the end, this case is not just about Trump, it's about protecting the very fabric of justice. And that's why the court's decision is not just firm, it's historic.